All right. Good morning, everybody. Man, I look rough today. I have to clean up for later. A little bit after 9 o'clock here, October the 1st. Good to see everybody. I think I got a pretty good discussion for you today. Looking over everything, getting ready for today's afternoon video update. And looks like we're going to have another Central American gyre type event, some activity in the East Pac, and some energy coming in from the Caribbean. Um, and that could lead to more something trying to develop. Doesn't look like the upper air pattern is nearly as favorable this time around for something particularly intense, but we might have something to deal with over the next week or so in the Gulf, Caribbean, whatever. And then also, I wanted to go over with this inland flooding situation in Western North Carolina, especially being such a horrific event as to exactly what led up to it and why was it so bad and what was the messaging ahead of time. Went back and, as they say, checked the receipts to see what people were talking about, specifically the Weather Prediction Center. Used to be the Hydrometeorological Prediction Center, but they handle all kinds of stuff now. Winter weather, hazards, outlooks, heat, whatever, flooding. And they did a really good job. And I'm going to kind of go back and show you where we started with all that. All right, so that's the plan. Um, let's see. I want to share my screen. I'm trying to get this to go away. Come on, go away. Go away. Thank you. So let's share the whole screen here. And we go back to the title page. Super. First, let me look over on YouTube, see who all is here. Central, yep, CAG, Central American Gyre, CAG, sorry. Assumed that everybody knew and got to make sure that we were all on the same page. Yep, Central American Gyre. So yeah, let's go back over to Google Maps real quick. This is the current situation. Get the old telestrator running. Um, all these roads here in Western North Carolina that you see these dashes and even parts of upstate South Carolina, they're closed. Just it's terrible. People can't get around. They're having to helicopter in a bunch of stuff, and it's just awful. So this is the area that was impacted the most significantly: Western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, and parts of eastern Tennessee, extreme northeast Georgia. And we're looking at the potential of hundreds dead and many, many, many billions of dollars in damage. History swept away. Just a really bad situation, obviously. And if we zoom in, we get an idea of just how significant the road closures still are, and just the interstate being cut off like it is. Uh, it's just hugely impactful for a very large area, and we haven't seen anything like this maybe ever. And certainly since we settled this country. And the population's bigger, obviously, so you're not comparing apples to apples, but a truly monumental event that impacted a lot of people. So, how did we get here? Well, I wanted to go back and look at what the Weather Prediction Center was suggesting could happen, what their forecasts were. And this takes us all the way back to September 24th. And I believe that was a Tuesday. Let me just get my dates right here, because I know that I started getting my stuff ready on Monday, Sunday, and Monday. So, yes, Tuesday was the 24th. And that was the day that I left for Florida. I left Wilmington around noon, and I had done a video discussion Monday and Tuesday, and I talked about the potential for flooding. But the Weather Prediction Center did a great job. So this is September 24th, and the rainfall outlook was indicating um, the potential for excessive rainfall in the southeast from Florida up through Georgia and the Carolinas and so forth. So as we move through, then they had a nice infographic and some messaging here. All eyes are on Helene as the storm strengthens and heads for the southeast U.S. later this week. The following images depict rainfall totals over the next 5 days, and it was looking really bad. for the areas that we know that Helene did in fact impact. Moderate risk, I mean, the infographics are about as easy to understand as you can get. Everything is spelled out. Hopefully, people know where they are on a map. And then this is where things started to plant the seeds for what happened. We had a stalled front that came in, and you can see that stalled frontal boundary even right here. And it was laying over parts of the Appalachians, right? And so they had a mesoscale discussion that was put out also on the 24th for heavy rain and thunderstorms. And that continued, and it even says it right there, mesoscale discussion affecting where? The South Central Appalachians. And so this antecedent or before the event, rainfall was excessive. And again, this kept on going into the 25th. So you had these convective axis coming through here, all that heavy rain from the north of the Triangle area back into the western parts of North Carolina, just seeding the area with rain and more rain. And in some cases, there were already flash flood emergencies. Even the day one risk here on September 25th was moderate, as you can clearly see, from Georgia up through the extreme western part of South Carolina there and all of western North Carolina for the most part. And then the day three was already highlighting the threat there with a moderate risk in extreme northwest North Carolina. And then later on the 25th, they issued the high risk. A rare high risk of excessive rainfall is in place for the southern Appalachians Thursday night, where considerable flash urban flooding, river flooding, and landslides are possible. So this went up on September 25th, and Helene was forecast to become a major hurricane, and yet it still was raining. Flash flooding likely as the PRE begins. The PRE is your pre-rainfall event, something like that. And so it was still raining up there already, nothing to do with the hurricane yet on the 25th of September. And it all stayed. And so the day one, this is really important. On September 25th, there was also a high risk in this area because of the rain that was going on that day, 48 hours before this thing would come in. So it was already raining and flooding in areas like Asheville. I remember seeing it on social media, and it was just wild, like it was already bad up there. And so everything was setting up to provide the backdrop for a terrible, terrible event here. And this kept going and going. And then we have the storm surge stuff. And, Helene eventually got, somebody's calling, sorry, got to the point where it looked like it was going to make landfall as a major, and the messaging stayed really strong. And then by later in the day on the 25th, the high risk expanded, and we just keep going and going and going. And so did the rain. Still later in the day on the 25th, it is just raining and raining and raining across these areas. There's Asheville in the star. And finally, at some point in here, I know that I saw, yeah, here it is right here. Um, Hang on. There we go. My phone. Um, Communities need to prepare for catastrophic, life-threatening inland flooding from Helene even well after landfall. Widespread outages, power outages likely from hurricane and tropical storm force winds. This is from NOAA Communications. And then there was another strong message that came out. The high risk, continued to be anchored. And then the rain event kept going and going and going. And I want to harp on this because this was set up to just be a disaster from the get-go. It really was. With all of that pre-rainfall event stuff, the antecedent rain. But then there was this message that came out. I know I saw it in here. Um, where it was really, really, oh yeah, it was a post that they made from National Weather Service Greenville Spartanburg, that was really one of those ones like we saw in Katrina, where they issued, there it is, the urgent message. You remember where I'm gonna come back on full screen for a sec. When National Weather Service New Orleans, Slidell area issued that famous, bulletin that it was like an apocalyptic thing that they pulled out, modified it. The template was there, that this would be unsurvivable. Areas would be uninhabitable for weeks, houses would be swept away, infrastructure gone. It was like this awful, awful messaging that certainly did come to pass. Well, what we saw here from the National Weather Service out of Greenville, Spartanburg, this urgent message, National Weather Service GSP here, this was issued on the 26th. This will be one of the most significant weather events to happen in the western portions of the area in the modern era. Record flooding is forecasted and has been compared to the floods of 1916 in the Asheville area. So the alarms were definitely sounded, and the hurricane was coming, as we know, and the rest, as they say, is history. It made it into the southeast, up into the Appalachians, and we got the record flooding. The high risk expanded to include a good chunk of the southeast there, the moderate risk, and so forth. You saw the convective bands, and we ended up with incredible amounts of rain, anywhere from 1 to 2 feet. And we know how horrible it is now, right? So, what do you do? Like, we saw all that heavy rainfall already. There was no way that anybody could have really evacuated. You don't evacuate inland areas like that. It was just one of these areas we just got caught. The setup from the rainfall ahead of time, I think, guaranteed that this was going to end up the way it did. And so all these people are up there. It's already raining. You only have a couple of days. It's hard to just pack everything up and get out of there. You don't know exactly where it's going to flood. There's so many streams, creeks, and rivers up there. It's just almost impossible to count. But looking back, we can see that the cards were getting laid out well in advance of the main event, which was Thursday night through Friday. And now, of course, we're learning how bad it really is up there and that it'll take potentially years for things to get back to even some semblance of normalcy. But it, just kind of shows you that we're still very much vulnerable to these things and how much rain is an impact. And I remember looking at it when I was traveling and certainly discussing it and talking about it. But again, what are people going to do with that? They hear it, they live up there. I even mentioned specific towns. I remember a specific interview that I did on Fox Weather where I cited, Bakersville, Spruce Pine, some of these areas up there. It's where my parents used to live. But again, somebody's watching in those areas and they hear me mention their town. Are they supposed to pack up their stuff and go? I don't know. It's just, I think with so many people living anywhere in harm's way, and I kind of jokingly yesterday said, except for San Diego, because the weather there is perfect all the time, right? Every once in a while, and hopefully it's many years between these events, we're just going to get caught. You know what I mean? There's just going to be a situation where there's just not much we can do because you just can't go in and move hundreds of thousands of people out of the way, especially in a mountainous area, a logistical nightmare. And luckily, you know, these events hopefully are spread out far enough. Anyway, I just thought it's just, I was looking at it. And like, again, the purpose of these videos here, I like to just bring you in on the discussion. So let me jump back over, speaking of that, to the YouTube. And let's see what you guys are talking about in the chat. Um, I need to figure out how to make this go like full screen for me so I don't have to squint. Let me see if I can, at least I can blow it up there in Firefox. Um, let's see. Failure on a local and federal level to really push the evacs. Yeah, maybe, but it's hard to visualize. There's no like storm surge. We had the forecast of 8 to 12 feet and then 15 to 20. So you had something tangible because most people can visualize, okay, I'm 5'8" and 8 feet is certainly taller than me. That could be a big problem. Up there, they're talking about a high risk of excessive rain, flash flooding. Not many people were around, I'm assuming in 1916, that are still around today to visualize, oh yeah, that was bad, or there's nothing to go on. And I just think it was really hard. Um, What else? Can't imagine the property damage. Yep, yeah, I mean and just the historic loss of stuff up there. Um, and they are starting to occur more and more, but a lot of that too with the warming atmospheres, we live in more vulnerable places, you know? And so those two kind of go hand in hand. Um, yeah, that's an interesting point there, Wild Earth. They do evacuate inland areas in China, Japan, and Taiwan. Um, yeah, just a terrible situation. I mean, it's so hard because, we're all helpless. There was not much more other than dragging people out you know, and and even my kids, I talked about this on Weather Brains last night. My son had his bachelor party. He was supposed to up in Brevard and in Transylvania County, and they asked me Monday, Tuesday. My sons and some of their friends were wondering, hey, we're seeing all this talk of bad flooding up there. Should we go? And I was like, no, you shouldn't. And they went anyway. And they went up Thursday night and got up Friday morning, and all hell was breaking loose. And they had to get out of Brevard in a hurry, and they just barely got out before they would have been stuck up there. And I'm like, I mean, come on, if the kids of the hurricane guy who does this for a living, and they asked him, and I said, no, you shouldn't go, and they still went. It's hard because they couldn't see, there's no augmented reality, there's no visuals. Okay, this is what it's going to look like in Asheville tomorrow. This is what it's going to look like in Spruce Pine or Brevard or any of these other communities tomorrow. There's no way to do that. With storm surge, we can, and I have done that. I've won there's an award right. Where the heck is it? It's my pyramid. Oh, it's behind me here from FEMA. That award right there was from work that I did, brace yourselves, in 1999. I mean, some people here weren't even born then, right? Where I was able to computer generate storm surge on photographs. Took a real photograph, and I came up with a way using an old Macintosh computer, Power Mac G3, and some CGI software, and I would simulate water at the different categories based on National Hurricane Center slosh model data. And we published that in North Carolina and Georgia through this huge project with FEMA that I was able to do. And it was so amazing and revolutionary that I got that nice award from the FEMA director back in the year 2000, or no, I guess it was late 1999 up in DC. So we can do it with storm surge. And now in the modern era, we can, create AI images, whatever. Maybe that's what needs to be done with AI and augmented reality is to simulate instead of something for shock value and oh, look at what I can do. I can create an apocalyptic scene to use it to show, okay, this is what could happen if 10 inches of rain falls because we do it with storm surge. TV stations do it, network TV does it. We've seen it. And like I said, I did it going back to 1999, for goodness sakes. And look at where we are now. And I think it would really help if people could visualize and get something they can wrap their brain around, because until you've experienced it, it just doesn't sink in. And the same thing goes with our health, and that's a whole story for another day. We hear all the warnings about what we should do, what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat. And because it hasn't happened to us yet, you just kind of keep going along and hoping everything will be okay. But as I mention often, hope by itself, not a planning tool. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you. The setup there was certainly significant, and we're pulling for the folks up there. A lot of effort underway. So let's get to the tropics real quick here. This will be a big part of my update today. I'm not going to go back over this stuff later today because that's why we're doing it now. It's kind of the open discussion part. We have Kirk, which will be a huge ACE producer, and then we're going to have Leslie over here eventually. That'll also be a big ACE producer, it looks like. And we're going to start getting closer to going back above normal ACE-wise. ACE, in case you didn't know, is accumulated cyclone energy, and it's a way for us to gauge the quality of a season. And I was thinking about it, and I wanted to present a couple thoughts about this. I was trying to do it in a way that everybody could understand. If we end up on November 30th with an ACE score that is hyperactive, and I think it's like above 175 or 180 or something like that, if we hit that metric after all, but we don't get to 20 named storms, let's say, the numbers that people were predicting, um, I think it's still a win for the science of seasonal forecasting. And believe me, I would go all in if it was a complete failure and we'd look at why and not criticizing people, but I don't have a dog in this fight in terms because I don't make forecasts, but I want the science to be right because we want to trust it, certainly. But here's how we could understand it. If we still get to the high ACE, and we know we've already had high impacts, all right, but we don't get the numbers of named storms, I think that's very similar to, and let's use basketball, a sports analogy here, because we can all relate to it. I think that's similar to a team, an NBA team, let's say, that normally has 6 or 7 guys that spread the scoring around and they're pretty dominant and they win most of the time, whatever the team is. But in this particular game, maybe it's the NBA Finals or something, it was really 4 players that just had career highs. So they still won handily over whoever they're playing, but instead of 5, 6, 7 guys scoring and doing all the scoring, it was 3 or 4 or whatever. And very impressively, you know what I mean? Like whoever. And I know I'm kind of rambling here, but I was like, man, this ace is really going to start to go up. And we've also not had very many at all. I can't remember the last one. Maybe Alberto, when we started things, was the only sort of junk storm that we've had, where it was just this random. And look, remember 96L, which was before Helene and all this? And it looked like a tropical cyclone on satellite, sure enough. And the National Hurricane Center didn't name it. These little shorties, as they're called, PTC 8, that brought all that flooding just a few dozens of miles that way from my house in Brunswick County in southern New Hanover County, Carolina Beach. That looked like it could be a tropical cyclone, wasn't named. So that would have been 2 more right there. And I don't know why. I don't know, maybe if they're changing some of the guide. I don't know. That's not my department. But we haven't had any of these short-lived junk storms where people complain, where they're just naming stuff to pad their score so they look good. So even with those not on, we're not checking those off the list, the ACE is still going to go up significantly. And that's the true metric of the hurricane season is how much energy was expended out there. And those numbers are going to really start going up here. And we're only on October 1st. We still have 2 months to go. And anyway, so I thought that was interesting as I was looking out across the tropics and what's coming with Kirk and eventually Leslie. So let's go back though and look at the danger here is I can just start talking and talking and talking, right? So let's go back and look at the Hurricane Center stuff. There's Kirk. This will be Leslie. Eventually, it's 91L now. Now this certainly has everybody's attention because this is what we saw for the most part that gave us Helene, a little bit more than a week ago. Is that what's going to happen this time? Probably not. The upper air pattern is different, but there are some similarities. We don't want to ignore that. We have all this energy in here. The Central American gyre, not as pronounced, but it is pretty similar. All this energy in the East Pack, and remember we had John that developed out of that, and then a piece of energy came around and became Helene over here, and we know the end game to all of that. So now we got this upper level low rotating right in here. There is some energy that could pivot around and try to eventually morph into something. And most of the overnight models are suggesting some kind of development in the western part of the Caribbean and or the Gulf of Mexico. And there it is. You can clearly see, look at these wind barbs. Southeast winds here, they curve, and then they come back around this way. Not your most pronounced CAG, but certainly enough of a presence of it there that you're focusing the energy in this area And the GFS, as an example, does try to bundle that energy eventually, takes many days, and tries to send something up there towards Florida. This is 8 days out. But what this says to me, and let's change it around to the precip moisture. Look at this. A lot of rain for Florida. And, do you need it? Do you not need it? Probably not, not excessively like we could be seeing. But the main thing is look at all the dry air up here where we're having the terrible disaster right now. And that's what we're going to really need to watch. Uh, Luckily, the westerlies are starting to dip down and shunt stuff more this way instead of pulling stuff up this way. That's going to get harder and harder to do as we go into October. Not impossible, but harder to do overall. A little bit of a slug of moisture does come up into that region, but nothing like we saw with Helene. You get that front that comes down, all that dry air acts like a boundary. Uh, a little bit of moisture tries to come in, but that's still more than a week out. So we got to watch it. Still very much hurricane season, and it's not over yet. But let me back it out. Let's look at the entire North Atlantic here and just look at all this energy that's going to be milling around out there in the East Atlantic. You got Kirk out there and then Leslie to be. Both of these are probably going to become category 3 or 4 hurricanes out over the open Atlantic. And with those going at the same time, we could be doing, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 ace points a day easily. And that'll really pump that score up. And that highlights what we thought would happen, that it would be a very busy season and a season with a lot of activity overall of high quality. You know what I mean? Just meteorologically speaking. You just don't want that high quality to happen over you. Let's just go back to the title page. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at, and I'll put together a nice, concise update for this afternoon. Let me jump on our Discord real quick, go back to sharing the old screen again, see what people are talking about, if anything. Nobody over there at the moment. They're probably over on YouTube, which is good because everybody pretty much has a YouTube account. What else do we have? Just real quick here. Uh, Anything else? Maybe local vertical evacuation structure. Yep, that could be done, possibly. Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, the appearance on Weather Brains last night, and Catherine over in the UK. Yep, heading maybe straight for you later on. You never know about that. Um, Lessons learned by your son. Listen to the old man. Yeah, no kidding. They definitely got out of there in the nick of time and avoided a big catastrophe that, oh man, don't even want to think about it, right? I got to listen to dad even when it's your bachelor party. So that's it for now. I appreciate you tuning in. Again, a huge thank you to all the support we've had over on social media, YouTube, our Patreon, growing and growing and growing. And it's great because we can reach a good audience and, you know, educate people and get them engaged. And, we're busy and have all kinds of distractions in our lives. And sometimes the weather, as we saw, will swim up and bite you in the you know what, and it can be very painful. Um, and we just have to learn from it and hopefully do better next time. So that'll do it. I'm going to get some other stuff done and probably head over to the gym and continue that saga of trying to get in better shape as I head towards my 54th birthday next month. Hard to believe, isn't it? Yes. I think that's about it. So what that was. So we'll do it some more later today on the hurricane outlook and discussion, and we'll see what the 12Z models show, especially the GFS, and we'll take it from there. All right, let me shut the camera off and all that good stuff. Audio, there we go, and go back to my title card. I will get more fluid with this as we go forward. I'll figure it out. I like it though. I can do it right through Zoom. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. I do appreciate it. I am Mark Sudduth, and I will see you later today on the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion video this afternoon.